Hey everyone, welcome to the Roast War and Everything. Joined by myself, Fenian, and by Nolsey.
Hello.
Nice sunny day, actually, today.
Yeah, that makes a marketable change.
Yeah, it does. Still bloody cold, but anyway. Alright, so here we are on a Saturday morning, bringing this episode to you, and we're going to talk about the Commonwealth Games to start off with. So, I'm sure we're all aware that the 2026 Commonwealth Games to have been held in Victoria has been cancelled. There's talk that the Commonwealth Games might not even go ahead at all in 2026 because this is considered to be a last-minute cancellation. And, every Australian state has declared that no, they can't do it on such short notice. So it has to be some other Commonwealth country. I got to say, it would be hilarious if it just didn't happen at all.
Melbourne fucked it so bad that it just got cancelled.
Yeah, and I mean, that would, I honestly think if that were to happen, like, Daniel Andrews would go down in history as, you know, the one thing he'd be remembered as would be the guy who destroyed the Commonwealth Games as a result.
Possibly could be.
Okay, so look, what happened here? It seems to be, the far and away the most common criticism to be made is that Daniel Andrews opted not to have the Commonwealth Games held in Melbourne, but rather have it in regional Victoria and kind of the outer suburbs of the metropolitan area. Now, this meant that obviously the further you get away from the CBD, the less likely you are to find the kind of facilities that you need to host such an event. As in, you need big auditoriums and stadiums and that typically only CBDs have. So that meant that they had planned all of these sort of makeshift places, many of which that would have to be just simply
mobile huts.
Scratch. Yeah, and it is those things mainly, it looks like, that were responsible for the cost blowout. Now, I believe the original budget for it was $2 billion. Andrews seems to think that the final figure would end up being between $6 and $7 billion.
Yep. I mean, if you're doing the fucking mobile hut thing out in the middle of nowhere, then yeah, probably, because everything will need to be built from scratch. There's also some weird and wacky ideas kind of put out there that I'm thinking, like, why would you even do that? That's just going to cost a shit ton of money for no reason.
Yes. So, look, one of the stories we've actually got here, this is a claim that the Andrews government was actually advised as far back as 2019 that the decision to hold it in regional Victoria rather than the city was going to blow out the budget. So we're talking 4 years ago that they were warned about this. So this was, funnily enough, a report that the Andrews government actually funded themselves. So this was called the Greater Victoria Commonwealth Games Bid Feasibility Study. So it listed the likely costs and operational problems with a regional game that included a lack of suitable venues, security costs, other staffing costs, and the distance athletes would have to travel. Right. So one of the other major costs they were saying was, well, you know, when you've got so many people concentrated into one area, you're obviously going to need a lot of security, you're going to need a lot of police, you're going to need a lot of also doctors and nurses as well. You just need all the everyday sort of requirements that a large population has to be moved out into the regional areas because, of course, typically they don't have those kind of resources. So, yeah, all of these issues were actually handed down to the Andrews government in a report that was actually commissioned by them to actually tell them, is this viable or not? The report clearly said it wasn't.
Yep.
So Daniel Andrews has been looking terrible during these press conferences and everything because he's not taking responsibility for it.
No, and it's fucking showed in the polls. Have you read up on that?
I haven't seen the polls yet, no.
First time majority state disapproval. 55%.
Right, okay.
Yep. We've won him gone now.
Yeah, I thought this might have been the event that would tip the balance because I think he actually really miscalculated by not apologizing for this. Okay, he did one of these kind of John Howard moves where he's like, "I'm sorry it isn't happening, but that's not an apology," as in like,
Yep.
I'm not taking personal responsibility for it. And the way he actually worded it was, "I'm not going to stand here and apologize for not ripping money out of schools and hospitals and roads." All right. He just likes to remind everyone, he's like, oh, look, all the money we were going to spend on it is going to be redirected into all these other areas. Well, for starters, there's going to be a range of cancellation fees, okay? Because when you commit to an event this big, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of contracts that are signed, okay? And if you don't meet them, you obviously have to compensate the other party. So that is going to be an enormous cost. And what I'm saying is we might actually get up to that $2 billion mark anyway, as in the original budget that they had planned to host these games may have to be paid anyway just to handle all of the cancellation costs. Now,
there goes your money for your schools and schools and hospitals.
Yeah, well, look, he'll just say, oh, yeah, but because of the fact that it was going to cost $6 billion, that means we're actually saving $4 billion. It's like, no, it doesn't. You've just pissed away that $2 billion on games that are never going to happen.
Why do you spend several $1 billion on having a game in your state? Oh, it's not like that brings in extra revenue to your state that actually eclipses the amount you expended on it, is it?
Right, it's supposed to be, like an investment, but...
Yeah.
Well, okay, but look, here's the other theory, and I think this one is more apt. Those surrounding areas, like, it's referred to as regional Victoria.
It's not really.
But they're more like, just sort of like, if you ask me, they're more sort of just like the outer metropolitan area of Melbourne,
Or like the entirety of Perth outside of like 1 kilometre from the centre of Perth.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is obviously technically classified as a regional Victoria, but it's not really that regional. Now, these places, they're still, it's not places that say they vote for the National Party, like where it's you have safe seats. You have to go further than that. You have to get into proper regional Victoria where you've just got the Nationals ruling and,
people actually taking stuff out of the ground.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So these sort of outer metropolitan seats, they tend to be swing seats. They tend to be places where people drift between Liberal and Labor. They're marginal seats.
Like Orange County, California or some shit like that.
Yeah. So the prevailing theory, this is certainly what they were going with on Sky News, but I think I agree with it, is that this was perhaps the most egregious form of pork barreling that we have ever seen in Australian history before. Because this was Daniel Andrews basically saying, hey, let's bring a little bit of excitement to these semi-regional areas with the Commonwealth Games. And, that will convince them that it's going to bring in all of this revenue for them. Because like you said, that's the idea. You bring in the population, they come over here and empty their pockets.
They get hotels, they eat food, they get services, etc.
Yep, all of that stuff. So let's convince them that is going to happen, and this is going to provide this real kickstart to their economies, and then they'll vote for us.
And then we'll pull the rug out from under them.
Right. And then fast forward to, a year after the election, or not even that, Well, you just cancel it completely. They don't get it at all. So all of those people who may have been swayed to vote Labor rather than Liberal, that one thing that was promised to them has actually been taken away. And if you're saying that, he's finally dropping below majority support, that doesn't surprise me, because all of these people who were, swing voters would now suddenly be against him completely because they feel
he now has to
trade.
Bench on the entire idea that the population doesn't have any long-term memory. So he may have fucked himself. He may have fucked himself completely.
Maybe. Now, look, this has fueled speculation that he's going to resign. I don't know, because...
He's too much of a proud cock to resign.
He is. But, I do think that's hurting him now.
Yeah.
The fact that he refused to apologise, and it's got to be pretty hard to be able to convince the Australian public that this is not your fault. As I said, that their own report commissioned by them back in 2019 basically said, don't do it. It's going to cost too much. But they did it anyway. And if you ask me, a cynical attempt just to buy votes for these people in these semi-regional areas. So all the evidence points to Daniel Andrews just doing this as a cynical vote-buying exercise. And when he has to actually pull the pin on it and still probably waste over $1 billion, he actually has the gall to say, I'm not going to apologize and I'm not going to take responsibility. I don't think anyone is going to like that. And, sometimes it is actually in a politician's best interest to show a bit of humility and admit mistakes because, it humanizes them to an extent. But also, certainly in a case like this, where it is just so blatantly obvious that it is your fault, people kind of see you as being high on your own hubris and arrogance that they do not appreciate it in the least. So I really hope he goes. I'm sure we all do.
Yeah.
All had enough of the chairman.
We all wish that Lynn Fox fucking just beat the fuck out of beat him to death. Allegedly.
Yeah, well, how close we got,
Yeah.
Yeah, but apparently he just fell off those little steps. Wasn't that when they're just two little wooden steps? That was supposedly the staircase that he slipped on.
I fell off some steps and it looks like I've been fucking initiated into a gang. Yeah, bullshit.
Okay. All right. So the other big news of the week, of course, is that we've got a new Reserve Bank governor.
And she's a woman.
She is a woman.
God.
Yeah. Now, look, first thing to say is you obviously did not need to be Nostradamus to see this coming.
Yeah.
Whether or not you agree that Philip Lowe did a good job, or that he was just sort of treated unfairly given the unique set of economic circumstances that he was challenged with, it was clear that he was going to go. It didn't matter, really.
He should have stopped trying to be a PR guy, if that's my only criticism.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think anything he could have done or said would have saved him, though.
No. No, not really.
Can you think of the last time the Reserve Bank governor was actually a household name?
No.
I can't name the governor before Philip Lowe. All right. This is the first time possibly ever, except maybe in the early 90s, where people actually recognize the RBA governor's name. Okay.
It's a rule of thumb. If the general population knows who you are as the fucking head of the RBA, shit's fucked.
Yeah. They know your name not for good reasons. Okay, it can only be bad. If the average member of the Australian public can name the RBA governor, that is bad news for you.
The RBA governor is a celebrity on news media when people are cannibalizing each other on the streets.
Yeah. And look, Philip Lowe did his main stuff up, of course, was when he basically told homeowners that we did not foresee future interest rate rises until 2024. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, he has pointed out that he did say at the time that was provided that economic conditions continue. But I'm sorry, when you're communicating to the general public, you have to do it in terms of very concise, to the point, and understandable sound bites. And that basically means that there's no room for qualifiers or nuance to your message, okay? You can't say, this will happen except this. You have to just say this will happen. That's, you have to be that blunt. And he didn't
If not for the fact that people are retards.
Yeah. And that undoubtedly, I think, caused a lot of people to take out home loans when they otherwise wouldn't have, because they didn't make the necessary long-term calculations as to interest rates going up, even if they're still historically low. Okay, I know 4.1% is relatively low since the Reserve Bank's establishment, but still, a lot of these people locked in rates of 0.5%, expecting that that's what they were going to have until at least 2020.
They made the calculation how much principal they're going to take up based on 0.5, not 4.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You always base it on the rate of the day. And unless you're actually foreseeing those big rises, which they weren't. So anyway, Michelle Bullock, she's someone who's actually worked inside the Reserve Bank for almost 40 years. And people, of course, are always asking the question when this happens, and we certainly asked the question, was this a diversity pick just because it's a woman? In this case, I'm not too sure, because she's the deputy governor. And most of the time, the logic goes that when the person in charge resigns, the deputy steps up and takes over. One other thing that has been said here is that there were pushes by various bodies, I think mainly in business, that the new governor not come from inside the RBA. They wanted an outsider. I guess it's sort of like with Trump, people liked the idea of someone outside of politics who had never held office to actually come in, because they're said to be sort of more in touch with how the economy works generally, and they're not bogged down being a policy wonk. I don't know. I don't know if I really agree with that. I'd say you're probably quite adequately trained within the RBA, and considering she's got 40 years of experience, I think we'll be fine with her. Now, I just wanted to comment a little bit on David's article, David Hiscock's. So he published some quotes here that Philip Lowe said in Senate estimates not long before he was on the chopping block. So he said, we're going to have 2% or more people in the country this year, but the capital stock is not increasing by 2%. And so to translate that, that's a complex way of stating the bleeding obvious. We're not building enough housing to cope with the number of people heading to Australia. Okay, so look, David was basically saying that this is what caused Philip Lowe to be axed. I don't know if I agree with that because, well, as I just said before, if we know the RBA governor's name, it's not good. So he just had a PR problem, okay? He could not be the public face of the RBA anymore. The other thing is that while I'm glad he said that, I'm absolutely glad he made some comments on immigration. You'd be hard-pressed to find him saying something like that beforehand, because Philip Lowe was actually talking about the need for wages to be kept down in Australia. He said that if employers were going to give in to high wage demands by unions and workers generally, that was going to make inflation worse.
Well,
Now,
that's the thing. He diagnosed the problem correctly, and he was just giving a neoliberal solution to it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you only give that neoliberal solution in lieu of talking about immigration. Okay?
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, we actually know all of these problems. We've got lack of housing, so we're not building enough houses, but we're also letting too many people in because then they're competing for that lack of housing. So we got to do something else. What can we do? Oh, yeah, let's keep the pressure down on wages.
Yeah, let's make everyone fucking slum denizens.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad Philip Lowe said that, but he said some pretty shitty things beforehand as well.
Yeah.
That is always there sort of as a placeholder to say, okay, we don't have to talk about immigration if we can talk about this. We can talk about wages and other factors, stimulus spending and whatnot. All right. So he did go after, so like he was at a conference, actually at the G20 gathering. Jim Chalmers was there as well. And he said, the good news is there are a lot of sensible ideas about how we can do this. But another reality we face is the challenge here is a political one. It's not about not knowing what to do. It's a political one. And the political challenge is to get these good ideas that are already out there through our political systems. If we don't do that, then we are condemning our citizens to slower growth in real wages, smaller public services, and increased tension on income distribution. What he was actually specifically talking about here was productivity. He said that despite the fact economies continue to grow in terms of GDP, productivity is not going up. All right. Now, this again,
Oh, wow.
This blows away the neoliberal idea that to ensure high productivity, you need immigration. It's a load of shit. What this is actually showing is that no, it doesn't drive up productivity. It actually makes the standard of work less, but people are still willing to fork out the money for it.
Numerous, but in equal measure, retarded.
Yeah. Now, you know what I think? I think I might have said this before, but we're all very familiar of the whole Karen meme.
Yep.
Which is typically, I guess, a white woman who can't stop complaining about the service or something. Okay. Now, to me, what this very often means is we've seen a deterioration in the products that we buy and in the services that we buy. And we're being told, just shut up about it. Just don't complain about it. Okay? We're importing all these people who work for less, but they also do less quality work. So when you're out there and you might get a shitty meal, or maybe you got served the wrong thing, you should actually just sit there and not complain and get on with it.
Fucking take it.
Because otherwise we're going to call you a Karen. You know?
Yeah.
It's shit like that.
Well, again, it's making noticing the degradation of your society a social faux pas.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, everything is like crumbling around you, and you just get told, well, you know, you're just being a complainy pants. Suck it up and get on with it. You know, while your country is ripped away from you, your jobs are taken, the quality of life generally is going down. And you're told you're just a whinger if you don't like any of that. So, yeah, I mean, this means that businesses can get away with serving us inferior quality goods and services while at the same time actually increasing their profits. And they don't have to worry about matching that with rising productivity, because productivity is going in the other direction. Right.
It's because simply they can't. If they want to maintain that same level of growth, we're in a non-elastic system. as it stands. The only thing actually keeping that fucking rubber band stretching so far as it's cracking is, about 500,000 fucking Indians coming in, sometimes annually.
My God, so triggering. Okay, let's move on to the Fadden by-election. So this was in Queensland. It was triggered by the resignation of former Minister Stuart Robert, the controversial former minister, actually is how the ABC have put it. He's controversial because he, of course, is one of the ministers blamed for robo-debt. Anyway, the two major candidates here were Cameron Colwell from the LNP, and he shit it in, actually. So he's a former Gold Coast councillor. Was definitely the favourite to win because, well, the Liberals actually had this on a 10% margin. Okay, now he defeated Letitia Del Fabro with a swing of 4.5%. Wow. So that's pretty damn big. Yeah, especially given it was 10.6%. That was the margin that they previously held it on. I've got to say, it's somewhat surprising Labor even bothered to field a candidate here. There's no way you're going to win.
Well, Fanning's an LNP stronghold from memory. I still like one of the things that came out of Fanning was the fact that the Greens Party voters got pretty much exposed for who the fuck they were because all their votes got sucked up by the legalized cannabis party in that electorate. Yeah,
no, that's what I was going to say. So I'm going to go through, 5 parties here. So the LNP on 49.1%, Labor on 22%, One Nation on 8.9%, legalized cannabis on 7.2%, and the Greens on 6.2%.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Sounds like they just wanted to smoke weed.
Well, look, if you look at the policy platforms of the Greens and legalized cannabis, they're actually pretty much equal. One of the things that has given this party, this legalized cannabis party, a boost is, I forget his name now, but he was a guy in the New South Wales Greens who was accused of sexual harassment, if we remember that bloke.
Yep.
So he had to go independent, but then he ran for the legalized cannabis party instead at the last state New South Wales election. And that seemed to give them a bit of a shot in the arm. So I think actually what's happened is that you have just had these people from the Greens who've had to leave the party for whatever reason. And it could well be because
too much grab ass.
Yeah. And they're like, okay, what are we going to do now? Oh, let's just go and join this other party that is almost identical and just has a different name, So that could be what it is.
I'd say it likely fucking is.
Or maybe Fadden is just very close to Nimbin. I don't know. Because Nimbin's in Queensland, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Then again, every state has its own Nimbin, doesn't it?
I guess so, yeah. We've got Bailing up here.
Yep.
That's where you go to get magic mushrooms. All right. Oh, yeah, so look, Labor was saying, actually, beforehand, I think it was Jim Chalmers, he said that, anything less than a 3% swing for the Liberals is not good news. All right. Well, looks like they've got 4.5% swing now. So you definitely say that is emboldening them. It is, though, also coming off the back of the disastrous Aston by-election, okay, that they lost. That was quite embarrassing for them. But perhaps now they're actually starting, here I'm talking federally, the party is starting to rebound. Because the Voice is tanking in the polls, cost of living is getting worse, Cost of living is consistently named as the number one issue for Australian voters, and people do not believe that Albo is actually doing enough. So,
is he doing anything?
Not really. Okay, so we do have a new news poll, not on The Voice, but on party politics. So this is showing that support for Labor has fallen to its lowest level since the 22 election. So Labor's primary vote has fallen to 36%. So that is the weakest result since it won office. And then it says with base support of 32.6%. I'm not sure what that means, though. But anyway, their figures have fallen. Now, the coalition, though, has still actually fallen down. They've fallen 1 point, so from 35 to 34%. Now, they're putting that down to, that is, Newspoll is putting that down to the Robodebt report, of course, that was recently put out. So here we can see another example of Australia divided, I think. Labor have lost ground. The Liberal Party have lost ground, although not to the same extent as Labor. But it looks like those votes are just going to other minor parties. Okay, they're falling away from the major parties, they're going to the minor parties. And in the last election, remember, it was pretty much split three ways. The coalition gets a third, Labor gets a third, everyone else gets the rest.
Yeah.
And that is coming through even more pronounced in this latest polling. So, yeah.
Shit.
So it says, this shows a 3-point rise in support for minor parties and independents that suggests a backlash against the major parties. Yeah. Okay, so support from the Greens has risen to 12%. Pauline Hanson's One Nation has lifted 1.7%. And support for other minor parties and independents has risen 1 point to 11%.
I want to see what the support of the Hitler Party is.
Might be too early for that now.
Damn it. I can't wait.
Okay, let's move on to climate and energy here. Now, oh Jesus, you might want to follow the link in this story because just have a look at the woman that we're talking about here. She just has like the head of a rat. It's this awful fucking mullet. That is a dyke if I've ever seen one. So this woman, what's her name? Colette Joan Harms.
Wait, that's not a dude.
Yeah, I know, that's a woman. That is a woman, believe it or not. So she's actually a vet from Tasmania. She has been given a jail sentence. So she's getting sentenced to 3 months jail, and this is because she was arrested protesting against a mining project in Tasmania's northwest. She was given, she was bailed, and she was told that she couldn't go and protest anymore.
Yep.
She, of course, ignored the court's orders, and she went out and did it. And now, because of that, she's actually going to be locked up for 3 months. And this, apparently, is the first time in 12 years that an activist in Tasmania has been given a jail sentence. So,
well, she tried very fucking hard for it.
Yeah, and, I mean, look, we've seen these protests, ramp up ever since the COVID restrictions started to get wound back. We saw the same shit happening again with people gluing their hands to the roads and locking their head to the steering wheel with a bike lock, all those kind of things.
Yep.
So it's ramped up in Tasmania again, which, yeah.
I mean, I could have saw that coming, to be honest.
Because they still have a lot of hippies, not hipsters, but hippies in Tasmania. And I mean, the Green movement did actually start off in Tasmania, in this country. Hard to
Someone
believe.
needs to go down there with a high pressure water gun and just fucking spray them down.
But,
Dirty fucking hippies.
This woman, Colette Harmson, she is also a member of the Bob Brown Foundation. And Bob Brown himself came out saying that this woman is a hero. What, for breaking the law? You're allowed to go out there and protest.
For what we like.
But, yeah, I mean, look, I know this is the only coalition government we have in the country at the moment. But, you know, even Labor on the mainland are cracking down on this. Like, they put through some what people consider to be fairly draconian laws in South Australia.
Yeah.
But it's only because, like, when these people go out and protest, it's not like all they're doing is protesting. They disrupt traffic. They disrupt people from going to work.
Property damage, assault, etc.
Yes. They very often even slash the tires of police cars and still get away with it. Okay.
This has happened.
Imagine one of us doing that.
We would go to jail for fucking ever.
Yeah. So it's like finally the courts and the police are actually responding a little bit and saying, no, you're going to be locked up if you do this kind of shit. Right. Okay. Now, Labor is currently drafting its next policy platform. So that is ahead of the Labor Party's national conference that's going to happen in August next month. And this is actually removing supportive references to coal. All right? So previously, Labor's policy platforms have spoken about how coal is a contributor to the economy and obviously to our electricity grid. That's going to be dumped from that platform. So there were 2 paragraphs in the 2021 platform that backed the role of coal in the economy and in regional communities, and those 2 paragraphs are being removed. So it looks like Labor's green tyranny is going to be ramped up even more, because I'm assuming they're not just going to take those 2 paragraphs out. They're going to replace them with something else. Okay? And that something else is going to be green energy. So they're going to have an even worse platform to take to the next election. Okay. Oh, farming productivity. So the federal and state agriculture ministers are committing to a new national statement on climate change and how it relates to farming. So they want to make farming more productive. Yeah, good luck with that, considering who you're getting over to work now. And also, of course, to better protect the environment. So this national statement... So this wants ministers to implement pathways to support low-emission agriculture, sustainably increase agriculture productivity, and improve resilience to climate change. It notes that Australian agriculture is at the forefront of climate change impacts, with producers working in some of the most challenging conditions on the earth. But the farming industry must transition faster. Oh, good God. Now...
Hey, let's just fuck them. Let's completely fuck our entire agriculture sector.
Well, look, this is what's going to happen. Now, last week we talked about how Japan is going to start sourcing their gas from other countries now because of how crippled our gas industry is becoming due to the safeguard mechanism. Well, when it comes to Australian agriculture, 70% of what we make here is exported, okay, goes to the international market. This new statement, obviously, when you're considering climate change, what that means is you're going to push prices up and you're going to push productivity down, even though supposedly one of the purposes of this statement is to improve farming productivity. But it won't. It will have the opposite effect. So what I'm saying here is, well, all that food that we're exporting, we're not going to be exporting so much of it anymore because it's going to be too expensive for other people to buy because of this shit we're doing.
Let alone the fucking reduced volume.
That too, yeah. We're simply just going to not have enough to sell. Right. Oh. So, here's a story. I was wondering whether to put this underneath the voice or the Abbo section, but this is regarding nuclear waste facilities in South Australia. So, in the north of South Australia, it's just all desert land. It's like the absolute pinnacle of Central Australia, you could say. And, well, just as Bob Hawke said, it's the perfect part of the country to actually store nuclear waste and do so very, very safely as well.
No one's going to fucking live there.
No one in their right minds would.
Ever.
But apparently, it's still a sacred site. Still a sacred Aboriginal site.
I don't think you could fucking sustain a population out there. I don't think nomads could even fucking get to that area to cross through it. I call bullshit.
Well, the Bangala people would disagree with you. They said that it is actually a sacred site for women. Right? Now, they don't claim it to be right in the location where the nuclear waste facility is. They claim it to be in Kimba. So Kimba is said to be specifically a sacred site for Aboriginal women, and that the facility would destroy that sacredness, that holiness of it. Now, I
guess how much money do they want?
Well, that's not in the article here, obviously. The ABC is nicely, conveniently leaves that out. So this was taken to court. It eventually went to the federal court, and they have ruled in favour of the Bangala people. And, it's going to be shut down. You're not going to have it anymore. Now, I would also obviously say that they would be funded by green and environmental groups who are saying, well, we just don't want this. Because we know that Aborigines themselves kind of lack the agency to go through with all this stuff. But look forward to more stuff like this with the West Australian cultural heritage laws, but obviously also the Voice. All of these places are just going to be shut down.
I think it's probably good that now the Voice is actually really, really fucking shitting the bed, considering they lost New South Wales to a majority no.
Yeah, well, look, Pauline Hanson she's predicting that after the referendum fails, Anthony Albanese is going to face a leadership challenge.
No, I don't know if I got fucking easy. I was going to say, he kind of fucking already is.
In a way. I would just say, I probably disagree because it's hard to get a new leader now. You have to go through a primary process. So
yeah, I guess there is no standouts in the Labour Party currently.
No, there's only Tanya Plibersek, and she can't become PM because of who her husband is. So yeah, it's got to come from elsewhere. Okay, last story on climate and energy. Oh yeah, sorry, punched the mic there. So this is a $92 million compensation payment that the Victorian government had to hand over to a business family in Victoria. That's a hell of a lot of money, $92 million. So they're the Dennis family. They're known as huge builders and developers in Victoria. And in 2010, the Victorian government created what's called the Western Grassland Reserve. So that's 15,000 hectares designed to protect critically threatened native grassland and endangered species. Okay. So to do that, it added environmental and public acquisition, so eminent domain, compulsory purchase of land, in the planning scheme to privately own land that contained native grassland. Now, here was the tricky thing that they did, right? After they imposed like these new environmental regulations and restrictions over these areas of land, well, what naturally happens when you do that? The value of the properties goes down.
Yeah.
Okay. So they would implement those restrictions and regulations first, then wait a few years, for the time to be up where they would then go in and purchase those properties. It's eminent domain. It's compulsory purchases of land. Government comes in, just like in the castle, and says, you have no choice, we're buying this land, and here's your money. But what happens if you've actually just, your property value has decreased over those last few years? Because of government policy. Yeah. So that obviously means you're going to be shortchanged. Government comes in, purposely reduces the property, the value of your property, and then says, all right, we're going to compulsorily acquire it at the current market rate, and here's your money. No. So the Dennis family took them to court over that, and it was court ruled in their favor. They said, yeah, you can't go in and do that, purposely devalue someone's property, and then only pay them that amount. So that is costing the Andrews government $92 million. That's a lot of money.
Christ.
For one family.
They bought up...
One family of developers.
Yeah, I was going to say, did they buy up like an absolute fuck ton of land down there, hoping to develop it?
Oh, yeah. They're huge. I'd never heard of them before, but yeah.
Yeah, you'll fucking hear about them now.
Yeah. No, I think, I got to say, I got to laugh at that. The Victorian budget's in a very bad way at the moment, but I think what they did there was really, really fucking slimy. And, even if I might not like property developers all that much, they just, all of these green regulations are just destroying the country.
We're happy about this because you hurt the right people.
Yeah. Okay, now, an Indigenous activist who was actually part of the No campaign, Keisha Haynes Jameson, she was saying that the Welcome to Country ceremonies are losing their power and meaning because of how regular they are. So she was saying that, originally the way they were intended was not for opening things like football games or corporate events. She said it was actually a practice used for ensuring permission and safe passage to and through tribal boundaries, and now it's been so mainstreamed it has made people apathetic. Well, I don't know if she's got her history quite right here, because let's just remember this. Welcome to Country is an invention.
Yeah.
Now, it was invented by an Aboriginal man, primarily, right? But it's not traditional because it was invented in 1976, okay? This is recent history. It was invented by Ernie Dingo, right? There was a bunch of Maoris from New Zealand coming over to Australia for some ceremony. I forget what it was. And because Maoris themselves do actually have these kind of rituals, they do have a proper welcome to country.
Oh, they had to make a Bung version to make them feel happy.
That's exactly what it was. And Ernie Dingo literally came up with it overnight. All right, I'm not kidding. Go read the Quadrant article about this. So, I don't know, this woman here, if you want to talk about tradition, you would actually just get rid of Welcome to Country altogether, right? Yep. Because this is not a traditional Aboriginal practice. It was something that Ernie Dingo made up on the fly. All right. Oh, yeah, so a lot of people in the Yes camp, they don't like the fact that the No campaign has actually been quoting them. Now,
yeah,
The pamphlets, this is kind of funny actually. The pamphlets for the yes and the no side, they're actually available on the internet now, so you can go and log on. But they're currently in the process of printing them, and it's costing around $10 million to do that. I guess just because to account for people who don't have an internet connection, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, every household is going to be getting one of these pamphlets from in not too long. Now, these people, right, very often, they say that the reason why they're upset that they've been quoted by the no camp is because it makes them look like no voters. But that's not what they're doing at all, actually. What the no campaign is doing is saying, hey, look at these people. Even the people who are voting yes, even the people pushing for the Indigenous voice, even they have said some things about how they're worried about what it would look like when it's actually put into practice.
It's mostly them just admitting they have no fucking clue what the fuck they're doing or talking about to begin with. That's what it is.
Or it's them admitting that the voice would have much more power than what people think, or that it would result in a number of high court challenges that would effectively mean a form of indirect veto. So one of those people who was quoted was Greg Craven. So yes, he's a guy who is voting yes and is part of the Yes 23 campaign. However, he has made comments previously talking about how the legislation would allow for bullying of the executive. Basically, like, you're going to pass our recommendations or else. So, and it's not just him, by the way. It's not just Greg Craven. It's a number of people that the no side is quoting. And it's a very effective tactic, I think. And no, it's not designed to give the impression that they're actually voting no. It's to show that even the people who are voting yes know that they're actually trying to fool us in a way. They're trying to lie to you about what the power of the voice really is and what it'll mean. So Warren Mundine actually wrote up an opinion piece the other day talking about that. And Greg Craven, funnily enough, said that he had been taken out of context. Well, Warren Mundine actually just went and printed everything else that he said in that article.
Yeah.
And if you read the rest of it, it makes his comments look even worse, actually, okay? Because he went on to criticize the voice further. So, no, he's not been taken out of context at all. All right. Oh, so did you watch any of the interview that Albo did with Ben Fordham?
Honestly, man, I can't look at Albanese without frothing at the mouth with rage, completely disoriented and brimming with hate.
Well, okay, so he did this interview. I think it was like a half hour long. Albo did somewhat appear to be cracking under the pressure. Fordham was asking him questions like, would this result in a treaty, and then would it result in truth-telling? Now, Albo said no to all of them, but Fordham went on to quote people who are architects of the voice. I don't think he quoted Mark Liebler. It would have been good if he did. But he, quoted other people. I think he did Thomas Mayo, for example, who were talking about all the things that they want to get after the referendum. And given the fact that these are the same people calling on to have an indigenous voice in the first place, wouldn't it logically be safe to assume that these same people are going to push for further change? Albo didn't seem to be able to answer any of those questions, or at least not do it where he looked visibly agitated. Now, one area where I will actually somewhat defend him was when he said, "It sounds like you're reading from the no pamphlet." And then Ben Fordham got really, really angry, and he was like, "No, I'm reading from from my pre-written questions and everything. It's like, okay.
Hey, buddy, you need to work on your sales pitch.
Yeah, but he hammered that point, and then eventually Albo just said, look, I wasn't accusing you of reading from the pamphlet, but I was accusing you of using the talking points. I do actually think that's what Albanese meant there. It's like when you say to someone, oh, you're reading straight from the playbook or something. It's a figure of speech, okay? He didn't mean it literally. So I thought that part of it was a bit silly to attack him.
He's just accusing of using the wrong buzzwords.
Yeah. The main point is that he was not able to adequately defend the voice as only a modest change, as merely advice that would never result in haranguing or harassing the governments to pass certain legislation. And also he wasn't able to say that it wouldn't result in further greater structural reform further down the line. That was the main thing I got away from it. And holy shit, Albo's really going to have to pick up his game. Because if this is like the standard that he's going to be doing, wow. The yes vote is only going to go south. Okay, so Jacinta Price actually challenged the current Indigenous Affairs Minister, Linda Burney, to a debate on The Voice. Well, guess what? Linda Burney said no. Now, as far as I know, they're both half-castes. Jacinta Price definitely is. I'm not sure about Linda Burney, but she does look at... You can actually look at Linda Burney and say, okay, yeah, I see some Aboriginal there in you. But Jacinta Price is infinitely more intelligent. All right? And I'm not being a simp for Jacinta, okay? I still have a lot of criticism for her. But Linda Burney just can't seem to take a foot out of her mouth.
This batch of half-castes has a lot more neurons in it.
Yeah, she does. Anyone who saw her National Press Club address or anyone who saw her latest interview on Insiders will know that. And the reason that she gave for this was really pathetic. She said it was the Liberals trying to politicise the issue. He said they're playing politics. She said The Voice is about the voice of Australians and not about politicians. The Liberal Party just always want to make this about politicians. Oh my God, Linda Burney. You're talking about a constitutional amendment that would provide an advisory board to executive government, and you're trying to tell us that that isn't political? That has nothing to do with politics? Is that right? I hate it when politicians always use that excuse, saying playing politics. You are a politician. What do you mean playing politics? That's your job. Your job is politics. Okay.
It's just kind of funny when all this shit just fucking rhetorically collapses like this.
Yeah.
We've made our system so retarded we can't even mention politics when it comes to literal politicians doing their fucking job.
Right. Okay, now this was a story that amused me a bit here. So there's a no campaigner by the name of Gary Johns, who, believe it or not, is actually a former member of the Labor Party. He said that Aboriginal people are grateful for the gift of modernisation. And he also defended the work of churches in their involvement with the stolen generations. Okay. So he made these comments while campaigning for the no vote. Well, I'll read out what he said here. He said, "We were all once hunters and gatherers, but we moved on. And we were gifted that." So he's a former Labor minister. "We've brought a gift to this country, and most Aboriginal people are grateful for that gift. How many? Well, I say it's this. About 80% of Aboriginal people are doing about as well as other Australians." Don't know about that. It's the last 20% who've not. To use an old term, come in. The job is now to bring in the last 20%.
Oh, fuck.
No, I think we're good without them.
Yeah.
They can stay over there. Also, I don't know how the hell they could say that 80% of Aborigines enjoy the same living standards as the rest of us. That's not true.
They're given
No,
the
it's not
opportunity for it.
Yeah.
They just don't take it, and then they bust a hole in the wall and start shitting in it.
Right. Oh, he also said Aboriginal people were often no longer as identifiable as they once were, and just not that exotic. So he must be talking about interbreeding there. Considering, most people who identify as Aboriginal probably don't look it anymore. Because, believe me, when you see a full-blooded Aboriginal person, you'll know.
When you see a full-blooded Aboriginal person, you can smell the aura of petrol and alcoholism coming off of them from a mile away. And they might
of course.
And if you don't give them $5 for the bus, they might just kill you.
He has, of course, been condemned for racism here. It's just a shame. Like, he admits the stolen generations happened. You know, he's just kind of saying, well, it was a good thing. It's like, no, dude, it didn't happen at all, right? Yes, some children were taken away because of neglect from their parents, but that's not the same thing of having a program of racial extermination through the breeding out of colour of children. Just didn't happen. All right. Oh, yeah, well, just real quickly, the latest news poll has support for the voice down to 41%. I think most people know that. The poll before that I think was Gallup, was actually down at 38%. That leads me to believe that the poll taken by the Australia Institute, which had support at 52%, must be a load of shit, because that's not what the other polls are saying. Now, this also found that for the first time, women are more likely than men to vote no. Now, what is going on there?
Actually, I was going to say, everyone's exposed to the same level of danger from Aboriginal, so it's not like a danger thing, so what is going on there?
Well, women would be more vulnerable, though.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
I'd say. So I'm not sure what to make of that. Okay, so now also, the no vote in regional Australia is now 62%. Now, that's a pretty whopping majority, right there. And obviously, people in regional Australia tend to have a lot of contact with Aboriginal people. So.
And if not people, then the laws.
Right. Okay. We'll move on to some other Aboriginal news. Okay, so we've all heard about the tree planting fiasco that's going on here. Now, you had one in Geraldton, and then you had one in the Canning River. So the Geraldton mayor was saying that hundreds of saplings originally scheduled to be planted at a burnt-out piece of bushland have been quietly planted in recent days inside a river catchment area. So they had to go and do it somewhere else. Now, this is obviously concerning WA's new Aboriginal cultural heritage laws, which basically say that if you are responsible for upsetting a piece of sacred Aboriginal land, well, you've committed a criminal offence. You can be up for big fines and even big jail terms. Now, it's another rent-seeking operation, of course. Basically, what happens is these various Aboriginal groups, or corporations even, I've been seeing them described as, they're effectively going to say, hey, listen, if you give us all this money, then we won't take you to court and say you damaged this area of land. As simple as that, really. That's all that's happening.
Cyberpunk Aboriginal corpo, but instead of having, cool cybernetic limbs and shit, he just drinks himself until he fucking eventually dies of liver failure at 35.
Right. Now, the one in Canning River, this is the one where they asked for $2.5 million. out of some fund. Now, this was like the who was it? It's down near Armidale and Gosnells anyway, where they were going to do this stuff, right? And they put it on hold, and the councillors actually said that they went and they consulted the government information websites regarding the rollout of the new laws, and they consulted the legislation themselves. They're all saying that they don't know what to do. In other words, like, they don't know if they go out there and plant these trees, would that possibly mean like a jail term or a fine for them? So
It will.
It might, yeah. I mean, look, it very well might. I mean, look, they were that spooked by that particular Aboriginal corporation or whatever that called them, demanding $2.5 million, that they went back to the drawing board on it all. And after consulting all of the sources of information, they concluded that they don't know. They literally don't know what to do. So, at the least, we know that the Labor Party have not made these laws clear. And they're, I mean, what are they, a week old? And They're already emboldening these groups to go out there and demand these enormous cash.
Give me about $2.5 million. You want to plant some trees, $2.5 million for that. And then where the fuck does that go?
Yeah. So, yeah. And we're obviously going to get a court case from this soon, at which time I guess that would mean we'll have a better understanding of what the laws actually say, because then we'll actually have a court precedent to go by.
You shouldn't need to go to fucking court to figure out what the laws are.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have to do that. No. All right.
I love our retard country from sea to shining sea.
Okay, so concerning rushed Indigenous construction training programs. Now, the Australian have gotten some documents under the Freedom of Information Act, and this is about the completion rate for First Nation students enrolled in a government-subsidised construction training course at Charles Darwin University. Okay, so apparently the rate of graduation is only 50.65% over the past 8 years. So,
so the same as everything else when it comes to fucking trying to teach Aboriginals.
Pretty much. So both the employers and the unions were, believe it or not, united in blasting this program, saying that it was useless. So yeah, I mean, it's supposed to actually qualify them, obviously, to work on a construction site, all different kinds of qualifications. And yeah, it looks like only half of them are actually getting through. So, a Northern Territory-based employer told The Australian that the university's 10-week program was rushed and did not provide trainees enough time to learn how to safely operate big machinery used in construction. Then the union said that, by comparison, through specialist operators in remote towns, these programs actually go for 18 months, and those have a completion rate of 95%. So there you go. How could you expect to give an Aboriginal person a 10-week course and then expect them to be job ready if regular people are actually doing a 18-month course? Yeah. Now, dare I say that the reason why they've worked it that way is because what's an Aboriginal person going to tell you if you say, hey, you need to spend 1.5 years training before you can go on the job?
Or get fucking glory.
Exactly.
Pretty much some of that. And also, like, dude, like, what the fuck do you think these, like, Aboriginal construction workers actually do when they get on site? Nothing. They literally do nothing.
Yeah,
sit
they
around
don't
and
sit around.
finger their assholes.
They might push a button if they get on a mining site, you know. When the remote plan operator says push the button.
Gonna need 18 months of training for you to hold a radio and press a button.
So, yeah, just another example of one of these bloody programs that we're just throwing money into the ether. Just money right down the fucking toilet because we actually purposely design it to be short term so that more of them will do it. But then when we do, only half of them graduate, and those who do graduate are fucking hopeless and never work. Anyway. Okay. So, quick story on Bruce Pascoe. Bruce Pascoe is doing a I'm a victim role. Again.
Oh, fucking Christ.
Not just that, you know, he's part of a victim class, even though he isn't. He's not Aboriginal at all. He's like entirely Anglo, in fact. He's talking about the pressure that was mounted upon him from the release of his book Dark Emu back in 2014. And apparently, that pressure led to the separation from his wife. And he said
maybe don't make a blood libel book, you fucking fuck.
Well, he said because of the controversy surrounding the book. He said while he was writing it, he knew like this was going to result in some backlash and whatnot, simply because of the content of him arguing that Aborigines were actually farmers and not just hunter-gatherers. Which to me, what that really says is, I know that if I publish lies, people are going to call me out on it. Okay. But I mean, for God's sake, like this article goes on to talk about how he's appearing in a new documentary series that's called The Dark Emu. So that's on ABC soon. So it's a nice way of the ABC cross-promoting their program as well, of course. But yeah, why would you want to feel sorry for Bruce Pascoe? Okay, how much money has he made from Dark Emu? How much money has he made from Dark Emu for Kids, which is basically in every single primary school in the country? Okay, Dark Emu would certainly be in every university, but I'd say it'd be in most high school libraries as well. Don't bitch and moan about that, Bruce Pascoe. And also, he charges exorbitant fees to go on his farmland and get tours and stuff as well. Like, more expensive than a hotel. This guy is swimming in fucking money. And he wants to bitch and moan because, what, people have pointed out that what you're doing is publishing lies? That's the kind of pressure that people need so that they don't publish lies. Okay.
Oh, man, they were yam farmers, don't you believe me? 100%. What proof do I have to back this up? It came to me in a fucking dream.
Okay. Realize I've pasted some of the same stories in there twice. So the last story we have on Aborigines is on the alcohol restrictions in the Northern Territory that, of course, were reintroduced in January when Albo did his quick little visit there for like 4 hours. These are being extended for at least another 2 years. Now, assault and domestic violence incidents have plummeted by around a third since January. So don't go telling me these restrictions don't work. They absolutely do. So it says, one government source said there were huge amounts of data behind the decision which would save women and children. Figures analysed by the Australian in June show the total recorded assaults in Alice Springs dropped from more than 260 in January to 170 in April. So there you go.
God damn.
So it's working, so they're expanding it, even though the Chief Minister said that this was a form of paternalistic racism. Well, if it is, it's paternalistic racism that's working in keeping the crime rate down.
Yeah, it's it kind of seems that it's fucking necessary at this point, doesn't it?
Right. Okay. On to industrial relations, and again, I can see I've got my prep sort of out of order here. So, working from home caps the amount of people and also the amount of days that you're allowed to work from home if you are an Australian public sector worker is being scrapped. So this was a new deal that was struck between the Public Sector Union, the CPSU, and the Australian Public Service Commission, which was, just around more flexible working arrangements. So this would mean that a staff member could actually work from home all the time, so permanently, unless there were clear business reasons not to do so. So that includes things like when you have meetings and whatnot. It's not practical to have someone at home. Now, who doesn't like this? The business lobby, okay? Because they're saying, they refer to it as the death knell for CBD retail. Good. What they're really talking about is like how public service staff on their lunch break go out and buy coffee and food and stuff, okay? Because there's like nothing else around. So they're just saying that's going to harm business. Now, on this note, I just would quickly say though, if you're a public servant or if you have the option of working from home, I wouldn't do it any more than 1 day a week. Okay, if you do 2 days a week, that means you're spending 4 out of the 7 days away from your workplace, and more than likely you'll be spending them at home alone. Okay, and I don't think that's good for you. Don't
become a hermit.
Fine. Yeah, don't become a hermit. Don't become completely cooped up under a rock. You need some level of interaction. Especially if you're single or don't have a family or whatever, then, really maybe you shouldn't be working from home at all.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents on that. Like, I understand sometimes it is convenient. Maybe, if you've welcomed a new baby into the world or something, that can be a good thing for a little while. But in regular circumstances, I'm going to say no. Now, on that note, Jeff Kennett has come out. He's really pissed some people off with this. He said that when public servants work from home, they should be paid less. Now, the reason he gave for that was the fact that, well, you don't have any commute time. So you're not spending your money on travel, but also you've got the convenience of just being able to wake up in the morning and walk into your office. You don't have any time to expend getting to work. I don't know about that, Jeff. I don't think that's the way it works. You're supposed to simply be paid for the work that you do. You don't take these other factors into consideration.
Yeah.
Although unions do sometimes, when they negotiate a contract, they will ask for things like a travel allowance. I know the CFMEU does that. They're like, you must pay for me to go to work.
If it's on a reasonable distance, then yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, if it's unreasonable. In most cases here, I don't think it is. But also just say that, like, look, no one is getting paid very well at the moment, including public servants, so that would be a really shitty thing to take away from them. Okay. Now, nurses in Western Australia's far north, so more Abbo land, they are apparently being pushed to breaking point because of staff shortages, lack of stable accommodation, and third world standards of living. Well, I bet it basically is the third world up there.
So, you are living with fucking, like, literally a group of people who are so fucking underdeveloped that medical attention can be seen as a life-threatening instance, and they will cave your head in at a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's right. And, well, on that note, it's actually getting worse because methamphetamine now has spread into rural areas, including
Oh,
Aboriginal
fuck.
areas. Yeah, they actually went for a long time without it. Like, it was just sort of prominent in the suburbs, but now it's entrenched in Aboriginal communities. And they're saying that there are more and more people presenting to hospital that are under the influence of drugs, but the one of main concern is meth, because that wires them up, it makes them aggressive, makes them violent, they assault staff, they smash up everything in the hospital. And yeah, it's really, really bad. And so more and more of them are pissing off. And I don't think they're going to react very well to Jeff Kennett saying that they should take a pay cut. So,
Oh my
and I
God.
don't see how an Aboriginal voice to Parliament would solve issues like this. Okay, now, still in WA, our police force has actually accepted the latest pay offer from the WA government. So, this was an extra $60 a week or a 3% pay rise, whichever one worked out more, as well as a $3,000 cost of living one-off payment, one little quick bribe that you get. Now, at the time, Mick Kelly, who was the head of the police union, he said that offer was disrespectful and woefully short. However, they took that to a vote with members, and they actually voted for it. So, police force is pacified for the time being. And they didn't go in hard like the nurses did in the end. Isn't that interesting? The nurses actually have more balls than the police do in terms of negotiating their contracts.
That's a weird one. I imagine this shitty new deal is going to be taking out on people at police stops.
Yeah.
If you get a female cop, buddy, I'm praying that you're wearing a bulletproof vest.
Okay, let's keep moving. Actually, yeah, we might actually run on time today. So, Tasmanian Greens, real quickly on this one. It's not very exciting. You've got the leader there, who's Cassie O'Connor. So she's in the lower house, and she's actually been there for 15 years. Certainly for a lower house Green, that is a long time. So again, it shows that the hippie movement is alive and well in Tasmania, unfortunately. But she is going to go to the upper house, the Legislative Council, as of 2024. And then you've got a conservationist, Vicar Bailey, who is going to move into the lower house to replace her. I don't know much about the Tasmanian Greens there, so I don't know if I can really offer too much commentary on all of that. So let's move on to caged eggs. So this is a plan to phase out conventional cages by 2036. Now, I've seen some of these cages. They are kind of horrific, I got to admit. They're cages where the hen literally can't turn around. Have you seen these before?
Yeah, battery farm cages. Yeah, they're pretty fucking shit.
Yeah, and I've heard of the definition of free range can sometimes simply mean that the hen is in one of those cages but can turn around. They've got enough room in that cage to actually do that.
Yeah.
So, perhaps we've got a while to go in terms of just how well we do treat them. But, yeah, that's going to come in by then. So eliminating battery farming. But I just found it interesting here, all these stats on eggs. So Australians eat about 15 kilos of eggs each year. which is about 262 per person. Australian farmers produced 6.6 billion eggs in the last financial year. New South Wales produced 35% of the country's eggs, Queensland 30%, and Victoria 20%. There are about 21 million laying hens in Australia, and free-range eggs make up 52% of all grocery retail sales. Wow, how about that? I didn't realize eggs were that popular.
I personally ate $5 in eggs in the morning, so I'm roughly the size of a barge.
Well, I mean, if we've got 21 million hens that lay eggs for commercial purposes here, obviously it is a bit hard to kind of fit them all into an area where they can be free range, you know. That's the whole purpose of, you know, keeping them in those tiny cages.
I mean, it is and it isn't. Like, I mean, like 52% of the actual current market for eggs is free range. Free range.
Yeah, but how do they define that though? Like I said before, like it can just be a cage that's a bit bigger. Yeah,
it's generally what they do is they have like this open barn area. Just from seeing like the kinds of farms around like where my parents came from, it's like a barn, and then it goes out to a larger paddock, and then there's a kind of like a hennery rack at the back. They tend to just stay in the little fucking box anyway, because you know they're very skittish animals. But you just generally just give them this barn area to walk in. And you can put a fuck ton of them in there. But unfortunately, when you get to a large scale of like having a hennery, it does get disgusting in other ways, like having to like clear them out so you can pick up the fucking dead bodies, because eventually they just drop.
Yeah, go watch Dominion.
Yeah,
not that I've watched that. Okay. So we're on the gambling now, and we've actually got some very big reforms to the gaming industry in Victoria. This is perhaps one of the only things I'm looking at from Daniel Andrews and saying, okay, I think I agree with this. So it's mainly concerning poker machines that are not in Crown Casino, because, of course, Crown Casino always gets exceptions, as does Star Casino. So here's what we're going to have. You're going to have mandatory pre-commitment limits and carded play. There'll be load-up limits, how much money an individual can put into an EGM at a time. What is EGM? Oh, electronic gaming machine. So that's what your EGM is.
That's an abbreviation we didn't fucking need.
Yeah. And also, that load-up limit is going to be capped at $100. The current limit is $1,000. Okay? So if you go out with your pre-commitment card, you go and you lose $100 on the pokies, you'll be locked out for the rest of the day. I think that's pretty good.
Crankheads seething.
Yep. Okay, so by mid-2024, you will have mandatory closure periods. So they'll be enforced for all gaming machine areas in a venue, excluding Crown Casino, of course. And that, oh Jesus, that is going to be between the hours of 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. Okay? So that's like a 6-hour window where like everyone is sleeping, for God's sake. I mean, I do know that like the pensioners very often arrive at like 8 in the morning at some of those places. So I guess they're taking a little bit of gaming time away from them there. But still, I mean, come on, between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m., Jesus Christ.
Then again, have you seen the inside of cinema between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m.?
Yeah, you don't want to be there. So it's also going to be mandatory for all of these machines to spin at a rate of 3 seconds per game. So that slows down the game pace, which obviously just limits the amount that you can bet within a time frame and obviously then the amount that you're able to lose. So yeah, these are actually pretty wide-ranging reforms, and I think they'll actually help a lot of gambling addicts out there. So,
yeah, fair.
Okay, now in New South Wales, the new Premier Chris Minns, he actually set up an independent panel to oversee a delayed trial of cashless gaming cards for poker machines, just like what they have actually already had in Victoria for a while. Now, it's going to be delivering findings on that little experiment next year. But in light of these new laws that have come into place in Victoria, people are now really putting the pressure on Chris Minns to implement the same kind of laws. Naturally, you've got the gaming lobby, what have we got? Liquor, Gaming and Racing Commissioner, this game called Michael Foggo, who's been attacking him.
Jesus.
But also, think about the people who firebombed Friendly Geordie's house. I mean, seriously, if he does this, like, you could be a target of organised crime.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing in Victoria, but the gaming lobby in New South Wales is by far the most powerful.
It's straight up criminal. It is just wholesale fucking criminal.
The most amount of poker machines per person than anywhere else in the world except for Vegas, for Las Vegas. Okay? It is really fucking bad in New South Wales. So that is perhaps why they're just going softly right now with these trials. And I mean, you don't even need these trials. They've been done countless times in other jurisdictions. You're going to find the same results in New South Wales. So, yeah. I do suspect that once he does announce some reforms, that they're going to be nowhere near as much as what they've got in Victoria. Okay, now, this story, we've talked about this before, but you might be surprised to know that the government sector, the part of the public service that is known to be the most, like, unsafe and unwelcoming for employees is actually the Pesticides Authority. I don't know why, but a report was just put out that found that the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, the APVMA, was captured by industry interests and subject to regular complaints of misconduct. Now, what spurred this report to come out was actually an incident where you had an employee urinate on another employee at a Christmas party. And that's how I recognize this story, because I remember us covering this. Some guy literally pissed on someone at a Christmas party.
I'm crop dusting you with some Masano here.
So it found that they were, like I said, captured by industry interests. So there's reason to believe that there could even be bribery going on here, because, you know, this is obviously an environmental body.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just what these
pesticides
companies
are a
do.
huge fucking thing.
Right, but it also found that there were a number of misconduct complaints that were being made. So here's one of the quotes from the report. It says, "There were clearly cultural issues with the organisation, given that, on average, there was a formal complaint about once every 4 to 6 weeks for 5 years." And I'm pretty sure the only place that could report actually having an employee pissed on by another employee. Jesus.
We out here at the fucking office work party going PP mode on bitches. Sounds like my kind of industry.
All right, so some stuff on national security here. And maybe you'll be surprised to know that in the past 5 years, no one has been charged with foreign interference over social media. And that's despite the fact that many people in Australia have been complaining to the authorities that they've been subject to intimidation and surveillance. I would say a huge bulk of them would be from China, or maybe you're from Hong Kong and you're considered part of China, and the Chinese government has a bounty on your head. And yes, they will utilize social media as a means of contacting you and telling you, of warning you, and therefore, I guess, intimidating and harassing you. So, yeah, this was these features were brought up at a Senate committee hearing lately, and yeah, it's just resulted in pressure on the Australian Federal Police, who deals with this, to actually look at this stuff closer, including cyber attacks from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Oh, Jesus.
Are we getting cyber attacked by the Iranians?
I don't think we are. This is the thing. It's ridiculous. We always want to blame it. Like, whenever there's a hack, it's Russians. And then when it comes to like this online abuse stuff, it's either Iran or China. So it's just silly.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the Solomon Islands. Richard Marles has basically said that we're going to build their military.
Oh, great.
The Solomon Islands actually does not have a standing military. Okay, it's got like a police force and really not much more. So, in fact, if you look at the countries in the Pacific, only 3 of them have standing militaries. That's Tonga, Papua New Guinea, and Fiji. And the Papua New Guinea military is basically our military, by the way. Okay.
Yes.
It may not be.
It's not a military full of Polynesians, although it still might be a military full of Polynesians.
Yeah. So it may not necessarily be, filled with Australian soldiers, but it is certainly our hardware and everything that is funding them. It's certainly Australia. So, yeah, because we're using the Solomon Islands as a kind of strategic pawn in the Asia Pacific, we have to actually give them things. So Richard Marles is saying, we'll actually build your army and train your army from scratch.
Fucking Christ.
What they're arguing for is a 1,500 strong Royal Solomon Islands police force. They're saying that police force is too small to guarantee security. Yeah, so there you go. That's it. That's all they've got. Like the highest level of authority is the police force in the country. That's it. I'm not even sure if they've got like a tactics unit or anything like that. All they've got is the cops.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So talk a little bit about China. And the G20, of course, that was just on in India. Jim Chalmers was over there. And he did have a meeting with Minister Liu Kun, who is from China, who's their finance minister. And they had to speak through interpreters. But what they've told us is that this is a further example of how the frosty relationship between China and Australia is
still there.
Well, it's still there, but they say it's getting better. It's getting better. So the main thing that they were discussing was trade, in particular the Chinese restrictions on Australian barley wine and live lobster. So we're making some inroads there. We know that, like, when it comes to minerals and resources, that
that deal's been settled.
Yeah, all of that stuff has been settled. We had like a new Chinese diplomat in the Australian. How would you say, the Chinese diplomat to Australia? I should say ambassador, which was designed to kind of make the relations better between us. But yeah, we know that we have had better trade arrangements happening. So I think it's just a matter of time until they do actually figure that out.
Yeah.
Now, well, talk about Hong Kong again. So there was where was this?
Are there still protests going on over there?
Not many now, because the government will crack right down on you if you do. But we just recently had this parliamentary body called the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Now, this was made up of members of both sides of politics, and they collectively agreed to say that those fleeing Chinese authorities from Hong Kong are welcome in Australia. Now, there are two people in particular, Kevin Yam and Ted Hu, I think I'm saying the names right, who have warrants on them from the Chinese authorities, because these were agitators politically in Hong Kong. And not just that, but there's actually bounties on their heads, not to kill them, but to bring them back to either Hong Kong or China. All right. Which is kind of crazy. The Israelis do this all the time, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Put bounties on someone's head. But in those cases, they don't care if you kill them. If you go over there and you kill them, you'll get the bounty. So Australia
do that all the time.
Yeah, so we've condemned those bounties, but further to that, we're not going to comply with any form of extradition either, even though China is demanding that we arrest these people and deport them. Well, that's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, that's going to be a real fucking sticking point.
Let's honour extradition arrangements and let's send them back. I don't care. This is not our problem. I mean, it becomes our problem when we have to house their refugees. Okay?
Yeah. We have to house the fucking global homo political dissidents from Hong Kong, and we have to house the gay Africans, and we have to house the reformed Muslims.
Right. Okay, so over to crime. Now, this place this is a place where you've got a large Aboriginal population in Queensland. Oh, it's in Cairns. No. Sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing here. But, okay, look, this story, what this is about is the establishment of Murri courts. Now, what is a Murri court? Well, here's how the ABC describe it. A specialised court process for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, which focuses on rehabilitative justice by connecting defendants to cultural and support services.
I'm going to rehabilitate you by chopping your fucking hands off.
Well, let me translate this to you. This is a court that does not hand out jail sentences. This is a court that finds alternatives to sending people to jail. Okay? That's all it is. Now, where is this place? Beenleigh. I might be saying this wrong. Yeah, Beenleigh.
The Aboriginals in Beener.
It's spelled Benleigh. Anyway, this is an area that is said to have the fourth highest Aboriginal population in Queensland, but they don't have a Murri court. So what does that mean? That, of course, means that, say, compared to an area like Cairns, where they do have a Murri court, more Aboriginal people are going to jail as a result. And, I think this would also be one of those things that The Voice would start recommending, because this is an example of a group of Aborigines, or people who represent the interests, so-called, of Aborigines, calling for an establishment of this court, which means letting them get away with more crime.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what fucking heinous shit do you have to do as an Aboriginal to go to jail in a regular court? So now we're setting up a fucking second justice system for these people. Not that we don't already fucking have one, by the way. Just, implicit, not explicit. We're setting up an explicit second justice system to make sure they can get away with more heinous things with just slaps on the wrist.
Yeah. That's all it is. Whenever they talk about diversionary programs, restorative justice, rehabilitative justice, all they're saying is, all right, we're not going to send them to jail. We're going to send them somewhere else. That's
okay,
it.
You beat and raped a woman, but if you just go to the arts and crafts section for a couple months, you'll be fine. You totally are not going to beat and rape a woman after that, will you?
God. All right. Now, did you hear about this English guy who was going to be deported back to Britain?
Yep.
Yeah, so his name is Robert Taylor. Now, again, so predictable. The ABC run a story on him, and apparently he's got a terminal form of cancer. He's only got like a few months to live, and he was due to be deported back to Britain this year, I believe.
Was it criminal behavior or some shit?
Yes. Now, that's what I was going to get to. Now, but I mean, before I do, I'll just say, as soon as I saw this, I was all right. This guy's not leaving Australia. No way. Because as soon as the ABC latches onto a story like this, and it's not just a Tamil family, by the way. That's just sort of the most famous example because it took a long time. There's been countless other ones as well where, the ABC puts the article out there, and they know that this is a good tactic because of the fact that the immigration minister has unilateral powers to override the decision of a tribunal or of policymakers, because they can just say, okay, here's a visa. They have the power to do that. And that's exactly
I was literally going to work last week. I heard this story for the first time, and then I was going to work the day after that, and then I hear that he's got a bridging visa. And by the way, his bridging visa is a longer term than he supposedly has to live. So yeah. So look, he came to Australia when he was 10 months old, and he never took out citizenship. He lacked the agency to do so. Now, if you look at the guy, it's not surprising. The guy is pretty scummy lumpen prole, okay? He has something like 7 kids, I think. But, of course, this was part of how the ABC pulled on the heartstrings. Look, all these kids that he's got. All right, but do you know what he actually did? Like, this wasn't for nothing, okay? He was convicted of aggravated burglary, which means you break into someone's house with a weapon and rob the house. And I got to say, I'm not too sympathetic with someone who does something like that. All right? I'm not a big fan of being home invaded, and by the way, we're not just terrible racists. We're something much worse, consistent.
Yeah. Now, would I care more if this guy wasn't white? Yeah, I would. Yeah. And I'm not ashamed to say that.
Well, because one of those situations is completely avoidable. The other one is just like, okay, it's one of those is it like conflicts inside a tribe, law, conflicts external to the tribe, or war.
Yeah. So, do I want this guy sent back? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Now, it's not just because he committed a horrific crime. I want to see consistencies here. I want to see it so that, these laws are in place for a reason. The ones that say that if you commit a serious crime, we can send you back to where you came from. I want that to be across the board, even for white people. But also, it's just the precedent that it sets. Like I said, the ABC, whenever they run a story like this, they get their way. The relevant minister just simply intervenes and gives a bridging visa or some temporary visa. It happens just about every time. So we've got to say no, even when it comes to, say, a guy like this who is clearly white. We have to have some consistency here. Otherwise, it's always harder to justify further down the road when it comes to, say, deporting non-whites. Now, on that note, you remember this High Court challenge? This was triggered by a Queensland man. It was more triggered by all the people around him. This guy was like a petty criminal with no money to his name. So, of course, it was all the human rights groups
Oh, Jesus.
Yes, some of them Jewish. They went all the way to the High Court, arguing that because he was of part Aboriginal descent, see, he was born in Papua New Guinea, he never had Australian citizenship, but he's like quarter Aboriginal or something.
Could not be made alien to, his native blood or some shit. Yeah.
Really extraordinary ruling, which was that an Aboriginal person can simultaneously be a non-citizen but also a non-alien.
Yeah.
In other words, you're allowed to stay in Australia without any kind of visa or citizenship whatsoever.
It's like a tacit recognition of a second type of sovereignty.
Yeah. And it if you ask me, legally it just doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's just completely contradictory. Because, I mean, even if you are here like us and you're just a Australian citizenship, that's still like a form of documentation. We can say we have this legal status because we have official citizenship. Someone like this has nothing. They have no citizenship. They have no visa. Yet they are still non-aliens within Australia. Very, very confusing. It obviously, don't look for any logical consistency in it. You won't find it. But anyway, his lawyer, Stephen Kavanagh, told the court that he had been advised that if my client receives 12 months imprisonment or more, there is a potential that this could reignite proceedings of deportation. So he was actually saying that the ruling that was handed down by the court could result in deportation eventually, somehow. He thinks that there's wiggle room in it. Now, I'm sorry I didn't have time to research that. That'd probably take a little while, actually, reading through the hearing of the laws and everything. But I'd also just like to know, why did his lawyers say this? Is this guy out there committing more crimes again? All right, because this was a guy with a very lengthy criminal record. I forget exactly what he did, but it was lengthy. And that was the whole reason he was facing deportation. Now you've got the guy's lawyers saying, hey, look, if he gets another 12 months in jail, it could reignite proceedings and he still might see himself be deported. I can only think he's saying that because this guy is out there getting into shit again.
Yep. Yeah, we got this undeportable career criminal. Can we please maintain that?
Okay, so on education. Oh, God. Let me read this out. The ABC summed this up very well. So this was a new initiative just declared by Jason Clare, the very slick, smooth-talking education minister. All Indigenous students will be guaranteed a Commonwealth-supported place at the university of their choice, regardless of where they live, as part of a set of reforms designed to make higher education more accessible. Do you hear that? Guaranteed a Commonwealth-supported place at the university of their choice, regardless of where they live.
Fucking Christ.
Oh, geez. What is going to happen there? What, I mean...
The retard hour?
I mean, we just talked about, the fact that, they can't even complete a 10-week course in construction at the beginning of the episode. How the hell do you think this is going to go?
Well, they're going to be forever students, that's what.
Yeah, and they'll never have to actually pay any of their tuition fees. And it'll just be a permanent drain on tax dollars. So... Anyway, Jason Clare said only 15% of people from poor families have a university degree, and it's even lower if you are Indigenous. If you're a young Indigenous bloke today, you're more likely to go to jail than university. Yeah, I believe that.
Is there a reason for that?
Ice-T would say in a Body Count song that there were more blacks in jail than in college in America. I'm not quite sure if that's true. But in Australia, yeah, I definitely would agree with it. That'd be true. But Jesus, look, doesn't Jason Clare know that we've had programs like this before, where you've had certain courses where have them given for free, or they have just really lowered like the ATAR score that is required to get into a particular course. And every time they do this, these Aboriginal students go into the course and they just bomb out. They don't turn up to class. They don't do the work. And what's funny about that is I would also assume that like they would apply very minimal standards to them, meaning that if they just handed in the work, they'd probably be guaranteed to get a good grade no matter how shit it is.
Yes, that's pretty much what ended up happening. I still remember one that was basically given an exemption from ever having to like present anything because he kept fucking passing out. I've told that story a handful of times. I just think it's funny.
He kept passing out.
Yeah, he kept passing out. He was afraid of speaking.
Why was he passing out though? Was that?
I guess it was just like an anxiety thing, but he kept like just dropping to the floor anytime that he was asked to present something. It was kind of funny. Yeah.
Jeez. Well, that's pretty serious.
Well, that was the one that showed up.
Well, at least he showed up.
Yeah, he wasn't around the next semester. I saw him around the fucking campus, but I don't think he was actually enrolled in anything. He was just there,
okay,
existing.
God. Yeah, but anyway, look, just watch out for this being another colossal fuck up. The exact same things are going to happen. Okay, so in WA, students who share violent content on social media will be suspended. Now, what they're mainly talking about here are fights that happen in or around the school. And of course, everyone films it on their mobile phone and then either shares it around or puts it up on the internet. It's a problem, okay? And it helps to keep feuds and beefs between people alive. Obviously, it's almost like a form of revenge porn, I guess you could say, documenting like someone's ass being whooped.
Yeah.
So previously, you would only get suspended if you were one of those people who had actually filmed it or was involved in it. Now, if you're just someone who didn't have anything to do with it, but you've got a copy of the video and you pass it on, you're going to be suspended for that.
We just need to go back to the good old days before cell phone cameras and just document it all in one giant ledger, like some fucking fantasy dwarf garage book.
Right.
On this day, Timmy whooped Jimmy's ass.
Okay, so here's some figures here, and these are actually quite extraordinary. So in 2022, there were 2,275 reported incidents of assault or threatening behavior against public school staff. Okay, not between students, but staff. Over 2,000. So that forced the state government to launch a new campaign against it, which has an updated action plan that consists of setting clear expectations about how parents and students are expected to behave. Notice they say parents in there because a lot of the time the parents either don't care or they're actually egging the kids on.
An ass whooping doesn't have an age limit.
No.
Ages 0 to 99 can enjoy.
And yeah, look, needless to say, these incidents, like if you go to the link where the story is and you press the play button on the video at the top of the page, there's a bunch of abos fighting.
Yep.
Okay. Now, there's also a proposal to put a levy on international student fees. In other words, another tax. And guess what? Big education in this country does not like it at all. Now, the amount of actual revenue that they generate is $10 billion a year. But the foreign student market, like as a whole, is actually a $40 billion a year industry. It is massive. It is actually one of our biggest industries in Australia. So they are recommending that they, as a funding mechanism, to put a levy on them. It's one of the ways to raise, obviously, government revenue, but they're also describing it as an insurance against future economic shocks. So from that, I can only interpret they might use it as like a bailout package.
That's what it
for
sounds
big
like.
education. Yeah, because remember they did suffer a lot during COVID. They were the ones always pushing the most to have the border restrictions taken down because they were really suffering. Them and tourism, I guess. So yeah, they still don't want it though because, well, they say it's going to deter all of those lovely Chinese students with really rich parents from coming here and opening their pockets. But good. I know that they say basic laws of economics, subsidize you get more, tax you get less. I want less of this. So let's tax it, let's put a levy on it.
Let's beat someone's testicles with a paddle.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we're just done, just over the 2-hour mark. So
yep.
I'm glad we were able to do an episode on time and not run over time for once. So thank you for joining us, everyone.
Have a good day.
That was episode 188.
Happy Henry.
Will we ever get to 148? Don't know about that. That would be a long way off. But anyway, we do thank you for listening. Join us 9 p.m. Eastern for XYZ Live. The rest of it is. Thank you. We'll see you later.